All right. Good morning, everybody. I just want to make sure you can hear me okay, first of all. Someone just give me a thumbs up. Thank you, Carla. I appreciate it. Give it a second for everybody to jump on here. Good morning, Michelle. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with joining palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. All right, and putting the palms down. All right, so thanks for being here, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. I'd like to start with a question, usually, just to give us a few minutes of time before we start the meditation practice. Also some time for people to just begin to share, communicate a little bit. Someone said to me recently that they've been coming to temple for years, but so many people come in, you sit, and then you go. And a lot of people don't actually know each other's names or can't really connect a face to a name. So as much as we've had to make the best out of being stuck online for the last 9 months, some have shared that it's been nice to actually connect with people virtually and get to know their names. So I think a question just to get us started for today. I think, and I guess for me, what pops into my head is, I always begin with taking refuge. And for me as a practitioner, I do that every day. And maybe later I'll talk about specifically what that means, but I bring it up now in general as a way to be something that at the start of practice really anchors you back to this moment, which is, okay, whatever has happened in the past, whatever troubles I had this morning, whatever difficulties I had yesterday, however challenging my year has been, whatever is in the past, when we sit and we start and we do our meditation practice, for me, taking refuge is that it's like a switch that says you're right here, right now. And it doesn't mean the past hasn't happened. It just means that if you sit and dwell on it all day long, then you're going to miss a lot of opportunities that are really beautiful right in front of you. And you'll also spend a lot of time maybe feeling down from things that have happened in the past. So coming back to the taking refuge, for me, again, it's a reminder to just say, okay, here I am in this moment, and let's begin now. So I guess my question is, maybe there's two parts to this, and you can pick and choose how you want to respond, but how difficult is it for you to trigger yourself or anchor yourself in the present moment? And I guess the second part of that question is, do you have something that you use, some sort of tool, some sort of reminder, some sort of mantra, some sort of something that brings you back to the present moment. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. So, how difficult is it for you to just be present and leave the past where it is? And what, if anything, do you use to help? I'll go ahead and type that in there for those who may be just jumping on. And if you are new to joining us, there's a chat box there on the screen. You'll see. Feel free to just type in your answers, as short or as long as you'd like. So no pressure, but anything you want to share is beautiful. Use to help. How difficult is it to bring yourself to this moment and leave the past in the past? And what tools do you use to help? Really, the same thing applies for future. I guess, phrased the question looking at the past, but really the same idea. How difficult is it for you to stay in the present moment and not allow the mind to wander forward too much? Really the same thing. I think for me as a practitioner, it's one of the reasons that, especially early on, that I practiced so intensely and so diligently, is because anytime my mind wandered anywhere, it was not pleasant. And I remember in 2003, when I started going to the temple, I used to go there because it, for me, was the only place I really felt safe. And when I say safe, I just mean safe from my own mind. I wasn't really in danger per se, but in many ways I was karmically from my mind and my thoughts and my actions. So when I went there, I knew that that was the place I could be that would keep my mind in a good space. So let's see here. When I'm cognizant of the present moment, I can live there easily. Music often helps ground to the present moment. Yep, for sure. I use the mantra, I am here now. Yes. Focusing on breath helps. Very difficult. Grew up in some chaos where parents constantly bickered. What brings me back is remembering I can be a better spouse and parent. Act for my own consciousness, not theirs. Yes. Pretty darn difficult because I always want to know the why of everything. The only tool I have is to continue working on trying to catch myself before I go down the rabbit hole. Yeah, that's really a good start. If you begin to recognize that your mind is wandering, just try to catch it as soon as possible. If I can see nature, I keep the doors open, or I meditate, it grounds me. Yeah, definitely, it's a good tool. I know we're all trying to stay inside as much as possible, but if you're out on your morning walk or whatever it might be, just listening to the sounds and seeing the trees, or watching the birds fly, whatever it might be, whatever you can use to keep you present. I think it's also important to watch throughout your day that when you have a thought and you get triggered, look at what time it is. Say it's 2:15 today, and all of a sudden you have a thought and you're thinking about something negative from the past. Look at the time, and then just begin to observe how long that thought from the past consumes your day. Sometimes just looking at how much time it's consuming, that in of itself will take your mind away from it a little bit. But when we begin to see how much time we lose because we're so focused on past, it helps us, I think, to maybe discipline ourselves even deeper to learn to stay present. Let's see what else we got here. As soon as I express gratitude, I feel present. Yeah, for sure. I do find I get pulled out of the present moment often. Music and nature, very grounding, and bring me back to the present moment. Very, very difficult. Yeah. So we got a range of thoughts. I think most people will typically agree it's extremely difficult to learn to stay present. But the more creative ways that we can just remind ourselves. Gratitude is a great one, because usually when we're thinking about something from the past that makes us angry or upset, we're probably not sitting in a place of gratitude. So if we can shift the mind to a place of gratitude for all that we have, it will help us release the thoughts from the past and the worries and the concerns and the angers, and just abide in maybe just a beautiful present moment. So, all right, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start the meditation practice. For those who are maybe new or joining us for the first time, again, welcome. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds. This is life. Life is filled with chaos and sounds, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of it. Posture. You just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Keep the chin up a little bit, just so you're not kind of hunched over. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll suggest closing the eyes if that works for you, or slightly open. Mouth will be open or closed. I will guide us as we begin, and we will settle into a little bit of silence. And again, most important, don't expect anything from this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe for about 6 hours. I don't make as many jokes online. I wonder why that is. I like being funny, but I usually make more jokes when we were in person. Oh well. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention and focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samupatha. All day things happen and we react. More things happen, more reactions. Now, for most of us with meditation, the last 20 minutes, we respond quietly, peacefully, still. The question is, how do you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day? And all we're working on is closing the gap where the way we feel now is closer to how we feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives, but with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Training the mind to be present and having the discipline to be with things as they are is incredibly difficult. And that's why we come together. That's why we sit. That's why we practice. That's why we remind each other that here we are in this moment, and in this moment, sitting and breathing, all can be okay. And as soon as we start to wander to the past and wander to the future, that's where anger, sadness, depression, fear, worry, stress, anxiety, all these things live. But in this moment, we're just sitting. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it's a practice. So with that, I'll pause. And for those who are joining us for the first time, welcome. I'd like to use the rest of the time to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address. So again, if you're new, welcome. There's a chat box there. You can feel free to type in anything you'd like. Thoughts, questions, comments, meditation, Buddhist practice. And I'll use the rest of the time to address them. Let's see. Would you teach about the quality of breath? I would need more clarification on what you mean with the question when you say quality of breath. So I'll go ahead and I'll jump to the next question, but if you can just rephrase that or give me a little more detail behind the question of the quality of breath. Because my initial thought is we either have breath or we don't. So if you can, Keith, please just expand on that question and then I'll come back to it. Let's see, Jesse, back to your previous question. During meditation, the sound of the singing bowl helps bring me back to the present moment. I love how sound plays into meditation that way. Yeah, definitely. The any sort of sounds. I talked about this, I think, last week, but at Deer Park Monastery, they have a mindfulness bell. And every so often, it seems like once every hour, or maybe more frequently, I don't know if they're on a routine schedule, but they hit the bell, and whatever you're doing around the monastery at that time, it's a moment to just pause and stop and take some breaths and reflect in the present moment. So the bells are very wonderful triggers to bring us back to present moment. You know, it's interesting in sound, though, that we're always looking for what we label and judge as peaceful, beautiful sounds. Any sound can can be used to bring us back to the present moment. We love the sounds of bells, maybe, or birds chirping, or water, dripping, whatever it might be. But then we think of sounds maybe we don't like, a child screaming, or a loud train, whatever, I don't know, whatever sounds you don't like hearing. Those also are triggers to come back to the present moment. So it really opens the kind of range of things we can use to bring us back to present moment, because everything is happening in the present moment. So, but yes, the bells are very nice. Benton, thank you for being here. My pleasure. Thank you for being here this morning. Always good to see your name and the letter B with a gray circle around it. Other thoughts, questions? Or Keith, any further explanation on the quality of breath? I can just talk about breath, I guess, for a minute. A lot of people share different ideas around the breath with meditation. For me, it's just important to breathe. I look at the Buddhist teachings from the Anapanasati Sutra, and he said, when you're if you're breathing in and taking a short breath, know you're breathing in, taking a short breath. If you're breathing out, taking a long breath, know you're breathing out, taking a long breath. So his focus with the meditation practice was to become aware of and observe sensation of breath as it is, not to force it, not to be too focused on, am I taking long breaths or short breaths, or I should say forcing the long breaths or short breaths, but just to become aware of the breaths that you are taking. For me, when I lead meditation, I always say at the beginning, I always have people start with taking 3 deep breaths and end with taking 3 deep breaths. That's just a personal thing I've done over the years, where I often feel like, we're running around crazy trying to get so much done. And then now's the time we're going to sit and do a meditation practice. So let's just settle and start with taking a few deep breaths to relax. And then I always end with taking 3 deep breaths. And the reason I do that is I want people to recognize what the 3 deep breaths were like at the beginning and what the 3 deep breaths were like at the end. And usually the 3 deep breaths at the beginning were moments to kind of settle us from the madness. And the 3 deep breaths at the end are often very different because we're settled now. So very often those 3 deep breaths at the end are more calm, relaxed, pleasant 3 deep breaths. But other than that, starting and finishing with the breaths, I'm just a fan of having awareness of what your natural breath is. But again, without understanding really more on the question, Keith, if you want to share, feel free and I can expand on that. So understanding greed is bad and generosity is the attitude. Well, let's start there. Before I even read the rest of your sentence, my suggestion is to not look at greed equals bad, to not look at anything about good or bad, because then these are judgments we're making on ourselves and others. I would rephrase that and say, from the Buddhist teachings, greed is the root cause of our suffering. First noble truth is life is filled with dukkha, suffering. The second noble truth is the cause. Cause of our suffering is greed, anger, ignorance. Now, I know you've heard me talk about this a million times, but I'm really just clarifying it for anyone else that might be new, that it's not about putting ourselves in these roles of we are good or bad, but when we are greedy, it will lead to suffering. All right, so understanding that greed leads to suffering and generosity leads to away from suffering, yes. I've been fortunate to have a steady income this year and save a bit of money. I donate to a bunch of organizations, but the solicitations asking for more keep coming. And I feel guilty having saved for myself and not giving even more while I'm doing well, and many are suffering and worthy causes need help. I'm a salaried employee renting an apartment, not wealthy, but living fairly comfortable. How does one balance what's enough generosity without giving it all away and moving to a monastery in Taiwan? Well, I think that it's a matter of really recognizing that one part of your question here. Hang on. There we go. So you put kind of enough generosity in quotes. Again, what I'm reading underlying this question is that you're doing a lot of seemingly a lot of kind of self-judgment, self-critique on, am I being generous enough? And that's really not the practice. The practice is not about, am I being generous enough? You have to look at, I think, what the Buddha actually taught about generosity. And he said that there are 3 factors for it to be considered generosity. And I'll just say this first. Very often we could give something, we could give money, but based on what I'm about to share with you, that doesn't mean you're being generous. So the 3 factors are, do we feel pleasant before? Do we feel pleasant during? And do we feel pleasant after? If those 3 conditions are not present, then you're not actually practicing generosity. And I see Bridget's comment here about generosity is not just financial. And that's absolutely right. In fact, anytime I actually talk about generosity, I never make it about money. And Eric, I know you've heard me talk about this as well a lot, but we give people time, we give people attention, we give people a hug, we give people a smile. A lot of these things we're not doing right now because of the pandemic. But there's a lot of things that we give that have nothing to do with monetary value. But coming back specifically to your question, there's a story years ago that a Sri Lankan master told, and he said that when he was, he gave an example of a parent buying a child for a bike, buying a bike for a child. There you go. And he said that as the parent was shopping for the bike, the parent felt pleasant. And so this is the first condition. He felt pleasant before. While giving the bike to the child, he felt pleasant. The parent felt pleasant during. And after giving the bike to the child, the parent felt pleasant after. So all 3 conditions were met, that there was this pleasant feeling of giving. So I think you have to ask yourself that just because somebody asks you for donations and you write them a check or donate online or whatever it is, if you don't really feel pleasant before, during, or after, it doesn't mean you're not giving them money, but it also doesn't mean you're being generous. So the Buddha was really focused on what's that condition, what's that feeling in your heart. And there's no dollar amount that can equate to. There's no percentage. There's no, give 10% or 20% or 30%. Buddhism doesn't work that way. Just ask yourself, what are the conditions in your heart? And do you feel pleasant before, during, and after? Buddha was also very clear to his disciples that you do not teach generosity until after somebody had given, because he didn't want the monks and nuns to use the teaching of generosity to take advantage to try to get money. So he's very clear on that. The teachings on generosity, and that's the word dana, are really beautiful, and yes, are the root cause of suffering. But it sounds like what's a deeper level of suffering is you're critiquing and judging yourself for thinking that you're giving too much or too little. And I would abandon that view. If you don't feel pleasant before, during, or after, then it's not generosity. So hopefully that helps with you kind of exploring, your practice. The other side of it is, we often will justify, and I'm just expanding, Eric, this isn't towards you directly, but for everyone, we often will justify what we need and say, well, I need this, this, and this to live, and then anything else I'm okay without. But even the things that we say we need, we often have way more things than we need. We often have more living space than we need. We have more clothes than we need. We have more food than we need. We have more gadgets than we need. Shoes and shirts. I already said clothes, but being more specific, we often have so much more than what we need. And so I think before we even look at what we are giving or how we are giving, I think it's important to look at what we have and ask ourselves, do I really need all of this? Because um, if we can learn to live with less, I think that's a beautiful practice. And, um, for me, and again, knowing you before giving it all away and moving to a monastery in Taiwan, because that's basically what I did 15 years ago, I wouldn't have done it that way now. If I were talking to the younger me, I would say, keep everything you have, go to a monastery. And when you come back, you'll have everything you have. And then you can use all of those things as a beautiful resource. So any money I may have had before I left that whole life I was living, I wish I'd kept it because I could use it for good. So again, I think it's just shifting the view, and not putting a value or, a dollar amount or a percentage, and definitely not a judgment on yourself for giving. And I think if the condition in your heart is to give, obviously that's, being a generous person is a really beautiful thing. But like you said, there's only so much you can give before you start to cut into what you feel is healthy for you. And if you start to feel bitterness or resentment or anger or frustration because you've given X and now you're stuck without anything, that's not really generosity. So hopefully that helps. Let's see here. Keith, some say breath in through the nose and out of the mouth. Any difference? Well, yeah. So that's kind of what I addressed earlier, Keith, is that I'm not one who's going to tell you to breathe in through the nose or out through the mouth or in through the ear and out through the toes. I think it's important just to breathe. There are different teachers, different masters, different lineages that teach it differently. What happens for a lot of people who are developing a meditation practice is if you're so focused on, am I breathing through the left nostril and out through the right nostril, through the right ear and the left ear, then you're getting wrapped up in the details and the specifics. I think it's most important to just sit comfortably and breathe. However that is. I'm not a huge fan of thinking, unless you're somebody who's, really locking yourself away in a cave for the next 10 years. The average person is just trying to get 5 or 10 or 20 minutes of sitting and breathing in. And I think we can pick apart too many details about how we're supposed to breathe, that really defeats the whole point of just trying to sit and breathe and be present. So I'm a fan of natural breath. For me as a practitioner, being a Zen practitioner, I personally follow that specific teaching, that the mouth is closed and the breathing is in through the nose and out through the nose. But that's what I do, and that's what's natural and comfortable for me. But I would not suggest that if that was uncomfortable for somebody else. So I would find whatever natural and comfortable and stick with that. So hopefully that's helpful, Keith. Thanks for explaining. Greg, I've had a pest problem. One of my favorite questions. I don't even need to read the rest of it. I've had a pest problem in my apartment for the last few weeks. I found it frequently impossible to think about anything else, whether working, trying to sleep, or trying to meditate. Can you say anything about intrusive thoughts, about feelings of disgust? Yeah, these pests, maybe you got a bunch of spiders. Let's just, I don't know, whatever you have doesn't matter, but let's just say we have spiders. Those spiders are roaming around your apartment and they're saying they have a human problem. And the human problem is you. They were living perfectly fine in the dirt. And then a bunch of humans came along and built these big structures and charged us a bunch of money for them. And then we continued to charge people money for them for endless amount of time. And we've paid for structures 3 billion times more than we needed to. And we have stomped on and stepped on and destroyed these perfectly happy, quiet, peaceful spiders and ants and everyone else that was living until we came on and developed it. So I think first and foremost, when we look at, the question around pests and insects and spiders and, all these types of things that, they were probably here first and we intruded on them. They're not intruding on us. Now I will add, for anyone who's brand new and maybe doesn't know me and, thinks I'm totally crazy, one, you're probably right. But the reality is that, yes, I get it. We don't want to live with a bunch of, cockroaches. And so you're going to do things to make sure you don't have a problem with that. So just remember, whatever you do, you are bearing that karmic weight of, if you decide to kill them, step on them, poison them, whatever it might be, just be mindful and aware that that's what you're doing. The Buddhist teachings are to refrain from killing, to refrain from causing harm. So there is a monastery in Irvine that we go to a couple times a year during non-pandemic times. And they have an ant problem. So what they do is they take boric, I think it's boric powder, and they put, almost looks like when the movies and you see a body outline, but they take this powder and they make it a little rectangle on the ground, and you sleep inside the rectangle. You sleep on these wood platforms, and so you would sleep on the wood inside this rectangle because the ants don't like this powder, so they won't cross it. So it basically keeps the ants away from you, and you get to share space. You sleep on one side of the powder, they sleep on the other, and everybody lives peacefully and happily together. So I didn't say anything about intrusive thoughts around feelings of disgust. I completely addressed it differently. But I think it's important to understand that this idea, the feeling of disgust means that we think we are superior and better, and we have the right to be here more than anyone else. And like I said, maybe these pests are completely disgusted with you and they wish you would just leave and go away so they could live peacefully. So good luck, my friend. Other thoughts or questions? Do one more question before we close. All right, we can close a little early as well. So I'll go ahead and end on that. We can join palms. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you head off. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up the Dharma Bum Temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not teachers, we're not masters, we're not gurus, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. We have classes every night. Everything is online. The temple closed March 12th, so a little over 9 months ago due to the pandemic. And fortunately, we've been able to move almost our entire schedule virtually. So YouTube for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and everything else is on Zoom. Check the website, dharmabums.org, has all the schedule information. Buddha for You, the gift shop inside the temple, has also been closed for 9 months. Just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we started selling online there. So you can link to it from Dharma Bums or just Google Buddha for You. You'll find it. If you need anything, let us know. Other than that, please stay home as much as possible. Wear a mask. Please don't do anything that would put anyone else in jeopardy of getting sick. I think it's a great Buddhist practice. It's a great practice of generosity to give people space for health. So thank you all for being here. I wish you well, and I'll see you soon.